Amidst blood-stained snow, amidst the corpses lacerated by an entity within that forest of no survival, no prey, no hunter, and certainly no infant. Yet it remained there, lying amidst the snow and the cadavers. But the entity that made Vera stall was not the blood but the silence. A silence so profound the entire forest appeared to be holding its breath, and at the center of it was the baby, a strange baby, not crying, not trembling, merely looking at her with amber eyes so deep they swallowed the very light. Vera turned her back because she knew she must depart to survive, but behind her there was no cry, no calling, only a very small sound, a laugh, rendering her frozen because no infant laughs in this cold, no infant laughs amidst corpses, a laugh so pure, innocent, and strangely warm. She should not have turned back yet. She persisted in doing so, and the child still watched her as if having predetermined that entity, its small hand raised, slow and precise toward her, as if not requiring to ask. The instinct within her shrieked to stay away, yet her hand still reached out. And the instant skin touched skin, the wind vanished, the sound vanished, the entire forest submerged in absolute silence. The baby constricted its grip upon her hand with a strength not belonging to a child, then exhaled a light, peaceful breath, as if finally having captured the entity it desired. Precisely at that moment, Vera understood. It was not that she found this baby, but that the baby had awaited her from the beginning. Part 1. Saving the Child. Chapter 1. Cries in the Dead Forest. The wind did not blow. It shrieked, tearing through the air and lashing at Vera's face like frozen blades. Yet what made her stop was not the blizzard but the silence. A silence so deviant it made her predatory instincts recoil. There were no beasts, no tracks, no life, only the thick scent of blood hanging in the air like an unspoken warning. Vera stood still, eyes scanning the white forest before her as she whispered, "Something is wrong." Her hand had unconsciously tightened around her dagger long ago. She should turn back, should leave this place immediately, but her feet kept moving, each step slow, cautious, until she saw them, bodies scattered beneath the snow, torn open not by teeth or claws but as if unzipped, as if something had searched inside them and left when it failed to find what it sought. Vera froze, her chest tightening. Not a predator, nor a human. The wind shifted, and then she heard it. Not a cry but a thin breath, weak yet so stubborn it refused to fade. Vera turned her head and told herself, "No, don't. This could be a trap," knowing she should not approach, yet her body betrayed her mind, step by step pulling her into the center of a broken circle carved into the snow. Ancient symbols that were forbidden, half erased, yet enough to recognize this as a ritual, something no one should ever be part of. And then she saw it, a piece of white cloth lying in the center of the circle, unnaturally clean amidst the sea of blood. Her heart slowed, heavy. She knelt, hands trembling slightly as she pulled the fabric back. Beneath it lay a child. It was alive, yet so small, so quiet against the surrounding scene. It did not cry, did not shiver, only lay there looking straight at her, amber eyes so deep they swallowed the light, as if light could not touch them. Vera stiffened. No, this is not right. She took a step back, but the child did not blink, only watched, as if it already knew she would be here. Then the wind vanished. Not weakened, but gone entirely. The whole forest plunged into an absolute silence that made her heart thunder in her chest. "What are you?" she whispered, but there was no answer. Only the tiny hand of the infant reaching up, slow, precise, pointing directly at her, not seeking, not hesitating, as if it knew she would reach out. "Don't." Vera shook her head, but her hand still moved, as if pulled, as if something called to her from within, and when her fingers touched the child's skin, everything stopped. The wind, the sound, the world. The child immediately gripped her hand, strong in a way unlike a babe, and those amber eyes softened for the first time. A soft breath escaped like peaceful satisfaction, as if it had just found what it was waiting for, something that made it feel warm and saved. A chill ran down Vera's spine. "No," she whispered, but her hand had already tightened and she made a silent decision. She pulled the child up, cradling it in her arms. Its body was unnaturally warm, not crying, not moving, only leaning against her obediently as if by habit. But it was all wrong, completely wrong. Vera inhaled and immediately froze as she caught the scent. Not blood, not the stench of death, but the scent of an alpha. Not an ordinary alpha, but the scent of the one who stands above all. Zarek. A memory flared like a blade. Any child bearing the mark, must be destroyed immediately. She looked down at the child's neck and saw the faint mark glowing as if it were breathing. No, I cannot. She stepped back. This was not a choice. This was a death sentence. She had to let it go, had to turn away if she wanted to live. Vera turned to walk away. 1 step, 2 steps, and then behind her there was no cry, no calling, only a very small sound, a soft laugh. Instantly, Vera's entire body froze. She slowly turned back. The child still lay there, watching her, its amber eyes brighter, a soft smile appearing on its lips. It was an innocent smile, pure and completely unaware that the person who just saved it was leaving. The wind returned, shrieking violently as if in warning or mockery. Vera closed her eyes for a second, then opened them. This time she did not hesitate anymore. She stepped forward, leaned down and scooped up the child, pressing it to her chest. I do not know what you are, but I will not let you die here. The child was silent, its small hand still clutching hers as if it would never let go. Vera stood up, turned her back on the ritual circle, and walked into the storm, carrying the thing that should not exist. And in that moment, no one knew that she had just saved something that could destroy the whole world. Chapter 2. Condemned. Vera did not turn her head throughout the journey back, but the moment she crossed the territorial boundary, she knew everything had changed. The tribal bond in her chest vibrated with a jagged rhythm, then grew heavy as if it were rejecting her. Heads began to turn, gazes pausing on her before sliding down to the child in her arms. No one spoke, but that silence was as heavy as a sentence that needed no words. Vera tightened her grip on the infant, and the child remained silent, not crying, not moving, only leaning against her with an abnormal obedience, as if it did not sense the atmosphere tightening around them. One by one they stepped forward, slow and cautious, forming an invisible circle, but no one dared approach too closely, as if the terrifying thing was not Vera but what she held. A familiar yet suffocating pressure surged forward, making the crowd part automatically. The alpha stepped to the front, his eyes resting on the child for exactly 1 second, but that single second was enough for his expression to shift. What have you brought back here? His voice was low and cold, freezing the air without needing to rise. Vera raised her head, not retreating. It is a living child. She spoke simply as if stating an undeniable truth. The alpha no longer looked at her but stared directly at the child held tightly in Vera's arms, as if looking at something whose fate was already decided. Put it down, he commanded. Vera did not budge. It will die. Yes, the alpha replied immediately, without hesitation, and a wave of murmurs spread out, but no one protested. No one dared. That is not a normal child, he continued, voice lower, heavier. It is a cursed thing. Those words fell like a blade's cut. Vera held the child tighter. You do not know that. The alpha looked straight at her. I do not need to know. The air became thick, stifling, and then a footstep sounded from behind, so familiar it made her heart constrict. She turned her head and saw him, her mate, the one who had stood by her for over a year. But his gaze now was not as it was before. No warmth, no hesitation, only coldness and resolve remained. Vera, he called her name, voice low but tense. Put it down. Her heart tightened. You too, she asked very softly. He took a step forward. Do not make this harder. Harder for whom? She asked back, but no one answered. He looked straight at the child, jaw clenched. That is not something you should keep. Vera shook her head. It is just a child. No. He cut her off, decisive. It is not. The air was so tense that a single small movement could shatter everything. Vera looked at him, trying to find something familiar, a hint of hesitation, a piece of the man she once knew, but there was nothing, only a cold distance. Look at me, she said, her voice trembling slightly. Will you stand with them instead of me? He was silent for a beat, then spoke clearly. Vera, listen to me, and follow the alpha's word. The mate bond in her chest contracted painfully. And if I don't, she said, instinctively backing away, lengthening the distance between them. He watched her every movement, then inhaled and spoke each word slowly, coldly. I reject you, Vera. The world seemed to stop for a brief moment. No sound, no wind, only a freezing void spreading from her chest, as if a part of her was being ripped from her body. She did not scream, did not cry, only stood there looking at him, and at that exact moment the child moved slightly. It raised its head to look at her with amber eyes, then looked directly at the alpha. No fear, no flinching. Then it smiled, a very slight smile, but so deviant that several people instinctively backed away. No one gave the order, yet they still retreated, as if their bodies understood better than they did. The crowd's heartbeat faltered for a moment before returning to normal, but the unease remained. Vera looked down at the tiny life in her arms, the small hand still clutching hers without letting go, as if it never intended to. She took a deep breath, then raised her head, her gaze sweeping over everyone, the alpha, the tribe, and the man who was once her mate. "You call it cursed." Her voice was not loud but clear. "I call you cowards." No one replied. No one dared. "If this is what you call the law," she held the child tighter, "then I do not belong here." A powerful gust of wind swept through. Snow began to fall more heavily, the storm returning as if waiting for this exact moment. The alpha did not stop her, only spoke one last sentence. "If you walk out tonight, you are no longer a part of us." Vera looked at him for a short second. "I haven't been for a long time." She turned, walking straight toward the gate without hesitation, without waiting. Behind her, no one pursued. No one called back. Her mate did not step forward. The bond in her chest stretched taut, so painful it made breathing difficult, then snapped, completely, leaving only a cold void spreading through her body. Yet she did not stop, did not turn back. The storm swallowed her as she stepped beyond the boundary, swallowing the tracks, swallowing the past. And that night, Vera left everything behind, the tribe, her mate, her old life, to carry the child in her hands, the thing that the whole world wanted to reject. Chapter 3. An Uncanny Child. Vera walked until her legs lost all sensation, until the storm behind was swallowed by a deep forest, so silent it made breathing difficult, and only then did she stop, sliding into a narrow rock crevice and pulling the child to her chest as a survival reflex rather than a choice. Her breath was heavy, erratic, but the infant in her arms was the complete opposite, not crying, not shivering, only lying still, amber eyes open in the darkness as if it required no rest, no fear, nothing a normal child should possess. Vera placed her hand on its forehead instinctively, checking, confirming, searching for some familiar sign of life. But what she felt was not a fragile body in need of protection, but a cold stability. Its temperature did not shift, unaffected by wind or snow, as if the cold did not exist for it. She swallowed hard, voice dropping. "Are you not cold?" But the child did not react, only watched her, a gaze so still it made her feel as though she were the one being observed. "At least cry," she continued, voice lower, almost begging for something normal, something understandable. But the child did not cry, only gave her hand a faint squeeze, slight yet clear enough, like an answer without words. And in that moment, Vera felt her heartbeat slow, calming unnaturally, not because she was more at peace, but as if something had just reached inside her, adjusting her from within. She recoiled slightly by reflex, but the child gripped tighter, refusing to let her go, and the prolonged silence made Vera realize something uncomfortable. This child did not need her soothing, did not need to be reassured. On the contrary, it was doing exactly that to her. "Fine," she whispered, voice hoarse with exhaustion. "I understand," though she truly understood nothing at all. She leaned her back against the rock wall, eyes unclosed, her body refusing to let her sleep. Yet the tension within her gradually eased, in a deviant, unnatural way, and that was precisely what made her more alert than anything else. Outside, the wind still hissed through the trees, yet it did not touch the small space where they sheltered. Then Vera noticed something that chilled her spine. There were no sounds of beasts, no rustling leaves, no signs of life whatsoever. She opened her eyes fully, body tensing instantly. "Not right," she whispered, for no forest was ever this silent, unless everything had fled, or everything was staying away. She turned her head to look out, seeing nothing but snow and darkness. Yet the feeling did not vanish, it remained weighing on the air, making everything feel suffocated. When she turned back, she faltered because the child was no longer looking at her but was staring over her shoulder, amber eyes wide, not afraid, not tense, only focused, as if it were seeing something she did not. Vera spun around, dagger already in hand, body ready to react. But before her was nothing, only darkness and falling snow, no tracks, no sound. Then she saw it, a small beast lying a few steps away, its body motionless, no blood, no wounds, no signs of attack, simply dead, as if life had been drained from it in a moment without leaving a trace. Vera approached, slow and cautious, kneeling to touch it. The body still held a faint warmth, not yet frozen, meaning it had just died, very recently, yet she had heard nothing, smelled nothing, felt nothing. She clenched her jaw, a cold shiver running down her back. What did this? She muttered. But the question had no answer, and when she turned back, the infant was still looking in that direction, eyes fixed, as if it had known this would happen before it did. You saw it before I did, Vera said, not as a question, but an assertion, and Nixie slowly turned its head back to look at her, then smiled. A smile of joy, of satisfaction carrying a very small but clear sense of gratification, as if something had occurred exactly as it expected. Vera felt her heart skip a beat, not out of mere fear, but because of a dawning realization. She was not the only one observing this world, and perhaps she was never the one who understood best what was happening. Vera looked at the child longer than usual, as if truly seeing it for the first time, not as something she had just saved, but as a being present in her world. I cannot keep calling you the child, she muttered, voice hoarse from fatigue and cold, but also because of something else, something she did not want to name. The infant did not respond, still watching her with amber eyes, so still they made her frown slightly. You do not cry, you are not cold. You are like nothing I have ever seen. She paused, her gaze unconsciously sliding toward the pitch-black forest ahead, a deep, cold void, so silent it seemed to swallow everything. Like the night, she whispered, then looked back at the child for 1 beat, 2 beats. Nixie, the name fell from her lips naturally, as if it had been there all along, waiting to be spoken. In that moment, the child's tiny hand gripped hers, not hard, but with finality. Vera stiffened. You accept that name. She did not smile, did not breathe a sigh of relief, only watched it. And for the first time she had the sensation that she was not the one who had named it. Rather, she had just spoken a name that, seemingly, it already possessed. That night, she did not sleep, did not take her hand off the dagger, did not take her eyes off the darkness outside, but nothing further happened. Only that feeling persisted, thin yet distinct, like a gaze that never left. When morning came, she left the rock crevice, continuing deeper, further. Yet the further she went, the clearer the feeling became, not of being hunted, but of being watched. Vera stopped, kneeling to touch the snow, and this time she saw tracks, large, deep, not hers, not of any beast she recognized. And what chilled her was that their direction was not toward her, but circling around, forming a great ring encompassing the area where she had slept last night. She stood up slowly, heart slowing down. It was there all night, she whispered, voice barely sounding like her own. She turned her head toward the deep forest, seeing nothing, but that scent was still there, very faint, very distant, yet familiar in a way that made her instincts fall silent. No warning, no resistance, only bowing down. Vera tightened her grip on the child. You know what it is, she said softly. But the child did not look at her. It was looking toward the deep forest where the tracks led, and this time it did not smile, only watched, as if waiting. Vera took a long breath, the cold air cutting into her lungs, and for the first time since leaving the tribe, she was not sure if she was running away from something or walking straight toward it. Chapter 4. The Shackled Wolf. Vera noticed something had changed even before she saw it. Not a sound, not a scent, but an absence. The forest suddenly became too quiet, no sound of beasts, no wind brushing through leaves, as if everything nearby had just vanished. She stopped, her body tensing, hands clenching. No, this is not normal, she whispered, while Nixie in her arms did not move, but the small hand gripped her tunic tighter, not out of fear but as if holding her back. Something is here, Vera said, her voice lower and more resolute. Her instincts had been screaming long ago. Danger, leave, right now, yet she stood motionless. Do not turn your back, do not run, she told herself, because she knew there were things that, the more you turned away, the faster death arrived. A faint sound echoed ahead, not a footstep but a dragging noise, as if something were being hauled through the snow. Vera turned her head and saw a large beast still alive being dragged backward. No struggling, no crying out, only pulled into the darkness as if it had already surrendered. She froze, her breath catching in her throat. No prey reacts like this, she muttered, and then the darkness ahead shifted, a heavy footstep sounded, slow, lingering, and the thing appeared. It was too large to be called a wolf, its body covered in unhealed wounds, dried blood clinging to its matted black fur. Around its neck were the marks of something that once shackled it, as if it had once been held and everything had failed to keep it. Its eyes glowed with streaks of bloodshot red, showing it was not entirely lucid, yet not entirely mad, but stretched taut between two states, as if it could shatter at any moment. Vera's chest was squeezed so tight she could hardly breathe, for she knew and understood immediately. If it wanted to, she was dead. "Do not move," she whispered, to reassure herself unconsciously, but completely unaware if she was speaking to herself or to the quiet Nixie in her arms. Nixie remained silent, curled up tightly against her chest, not crying, not flinching, only leaning against her with a tranquil stillness. But the amber eyes had opened wider, staring directly at that giant wolf. No fear, no hesitation, only watching as if looking at something familiar. The wolf stopped the moment those eyes met its own. The movement was severed, its gaze shifting from Vera to Nixie, and the space between them became heavy enough to suffocate. Vera tightened her grip on Nixie, the dagger in her hand trembling slightly. "Do not come closer," she said, this time more clearly. Though she herself knew those words were meaningless and true to that, the wolf moved, so fast her eyes could not follow, a shadow lunging forward and stopping right in front of her. Its hot breath fanned against her neck, teeth touching skin, only a slight force and everything would end. Vera half closed her eyes, her voice dropping, so calm she did not even recognize it. "If you want to kill, then do it." 1 beat, 2 beats, there was no bite. Nixie moved. The child did not shiver, did not cry, only reached out and touched it. In that moment, the wolf froze, not retreating but not advancing, its entire body as if turned to ice, as if that touch did not come from a child. Its gaze changed, the madness cracking slightly, giving way to something deeper, warmer, harder to name. Vera did not dare breathe. "It stopped," she whispered, almost unable to believe what she was seeing, because she saw clearly. It could have killed her in one movement, but it did not, and that was even more terrifying. A long silence followed, then the wolf retreated, 1 step, 2 steps, but it did not turn away immediately. It still stood there watching, not looking at Vera but at Nixie. Nixie did not withdraw the hand, only looked back, still, as if something existed between them that required no words. "You know it," Vera whispered, her voice dry, unclear if she was speaking to the child or to herself. The wind blew, the moment shattered. The wolf turned its head and vanished into the forest as quickly as it had appeared. Vera stood there for a long time, her body not yet believing she was still alive. "We almost died there, little girl." She looked at Nixie and spoke, then slowly shook her head. "No, it chose not to kill us, and that is what is truly frightening." Nixie did not react, only leaned against her, the small hand still clutching tightly as if having no intention of letting go. That night, Vera did not sleep. She held Nixie in her arms, the dagger never leaving her hand, eyes never leaving the darkness. "If it returns," she whispered, but the sentence was never finished, because a part of her knew it had not left. The next morning, when she opened her eyes, she saw a beast's carcass lying right in front of where she slept, not torn apart, not eaten, only lying there intact as if placed down. Vera froze, her breath slowing. "It left this," she whispered. Then she looked around and saw large, deep tracks, overlapping in many circles encompassing the area, as if all last night it had been here, circling, not leaving, not hunting, only guarding. Nixie moved, the small hand gripping her tunic tighter, and Vera looked down. The child was looking toward the deep forest. No smile, no expression, only watching as if waiting. Vera tightened her grip on Nixie, her voice hoarse. "It is not hunting us," she whispered, then slowly continued. "It is keeping us." A cold wind brushed past, but the surrounding forest remained silent. No beast dared approach, nothing dared enter. Vera looked into the darkness ahead, not seeing it, but she knew it was still there, somewhere among the trees. And strangely, that thought and feeling made her feel safe. "You see it, don't you?" she softly asked Nixie, but Nixie did not look at her. It only looked toward the forest. And for the first time, Vera was no longer sure if she was being hunted or being protected by the most dangerous thing in this forest. Part 2. Bond. The truth begins to crack. Chapter 5. Touching the monster. Vera did not take her eyes off the deep forest, where the dense darkness seemed to swallow everything, yet there was no movement, no sound, only the sensation. It was still there. She gripped Nixie tighter in her arms, but the child did not look at her, still staring in that direction, amber eyes so still she could not read them. "You see it, don't you?" Vera whispered, her voice hoarse. and Nixie's small hand gave her tunic a light squeeze as if in answer. The wind brushed past very softly, yet enough to carry a scent. Not blood, not the stench of death, but the same scent from last night, closer. Vera stiffened, the dagger in her hand rising by reflex. "It's back," she whispered, eyes scanning the surroundings rapidly. But there was nothing, no movement, no sign, only the feeling that the thing was standing just beyond her line of sight. "We have to leave," she said, her voice low and resolute. But as soon as she turned, Nixie did not move. The small hand did not let go. The tiny body did not follow. Vera faltered. "Nixie," she called, but the child did not react. Its gaze still fixed on the forest, and then it reached out its hand, slow and precise, as if it knew exactly what was there. "No, don't." Vera held its hand back, but Nixie squeezed lightly, not hard, just enough to hold. And in that moment the darkness ahead parted. A heavy footstep sounded, slow, clear, and it stepped out. The giant black wolf had returned. This time closer, clearer, the wounds on its body exposed under the weak light, deep, jagged, unhealed, as if it had never had time to recover. And around its neck, the marks of shackles were etched deep, not just as scars, but as something that still persisted. Its gaze remained caught between lucidity and madness, between instinct and something beyond control. Vera stepped in front of Nixie by reflex, dagger raised. "Do not come closer," she said, her voice low but sharp, though she knew if it wanted to, all of this would be meaningless. The wolf stopped, not advancing, not retreating, only watching, but it did not look at her. It looked at Nixie. The child showed no sign of avoidance or fear. It only slowly crawled a small step forward. "Nixie, stop." Vera pulled its hand back, but Nixie held firm, and then it touched the wolf. In that moment, the wolf jerked violently, not retreating but recoiling, its entire massive body trembling fiercely, as if that tiny touch carried something too immense for it to endure. A hoarse sound escaped its throat, not a roar, not a cry of pain, but as if being torn apart from within. "No, this is not right," Vera whispered, her voice nearly breaking. She had never seen a monster react like this. Its gaze changed. The madness did not vanish, but cracked like a fractured shell, and behind it was something else, deeper, like a memory trying to resurface. Nixie did not withdraw its hand, the small palm placed upon it, steady, certain, not shaking, not hesitating, as if it had been familiar with this for a very long time. And the wolf seemed to respond. It lowered its head, not completely, but enough to make Vera realize that was not submission but recognition. Vera inhaled, and then she smelled the scent clearer than ever, not just from the wolf but from Nixie. Her entire body seemed to freeze. "It's impossible." Her voice so low it nearly vanished. Not similar, not alike, but identical. She looked down at Nixie, then up at the wolf, then down again, her heart slowing. "You two have not just met," she whispered, and those words hung in the air like a truth no one dared touch. "I am not the first person you have touched, am I?" she continued almost unconsciously. No one answered, but none was needed, for the way the wolf looked at Nixie was already the clearest answer. Nixie finally withdrew its hand slowly, and the wolf did not hold on, nor did it advance, only stood there watching. The wind blew, the moment shattered, the wolf turned its head and retreated into the forest, but this time slower, as if it itself did not want to leave. Vera did not pursue, did not call out, only stood there until its shadow vanished completely. Then she knelt down to hold Nixie closer. "You know what it is," she said, not as a question. Nixie did not answer, only slowly leaned against her as before, its gaze showing a slight sense of loss as it watched the wolf's silhouette fade. But this time Vera felt the difference more clearly. The connection, the deviance. She closed her eyes for a second, then opened them. "I am not protecting you," she whispered, voice low and slow. "I am standing between you and the world." A cold wind brushed past. The forest grew silent again, but this time Vera was not sure if she should fear that wolf, or fear the way it looked at Nixie, as if it had belonged to the child for a very long time. Chapter 6. Connection. No one slept soundly that night. There was no wind, no sound of beasts, only a silence so dense it made sleep impossible for Vera. She sat leaning against a tree trunk, Nixie in her arms, her dagger still in hand, but her gaze no longer searched the darkness ahead, instead lingering on the child. Nixie did not sleep, or rather, she did not truly sleep. Her amber eyes were half closed but never completely lost their alertness, as if she were always there, always watching, always waiting. "Are you not tired?" Vera whispered, her fingers faintly brushing the child's cheek, an unconscious gesture she herself did not understand. Nixie did not answer, but this time she moved, her small body shifting slightly in Vera's arms, not from cold, not from fear, but changing. Vera faltered. "Nixie," her voice dropping, wary. The child's body trembled, but not with the tremors of weakness, but as if something were shifting inside her. A very small sound escaped her throat, not a cry, not a breath, but a pup's growl that made Vera freeze. "No, don't," she whispered, not knowing what she was forbidding, as Nixie's body arched. Bones shifted, muscles altered, not violently, not painfully, but with such natural ease as if it were what she was always meant to do. And then, in Vera's arms, was no longer a little girl, but a small wolf, its dark fur soft amber eyes still open, still watching her without a hint of fear or panic, simply present as if nothing were unusual. Vera seemed to hold her breath with every movement of the pup. "Impossible," she whispered. For no child she had ever known could shift so early. Nixie truly followed no rules she had ever understood. The small wolf took a step within her arms, then rested its head against her chest as before, as if nothing had changed, and it was that very thing that made Vera tremble slightly, not out of fear but from a dawning realization. The eyes, the scent, the reactions, everything began to click into place. She squeezed the pup gently. "Truly, it is not a coincidence." Her voice went hoarse. She recalled the gaze of that giant wolf, the way it stopped, the way it looked at Nixie, the way it did not kill, but instead protected, making Vera swallow hard. "You belong to it," she whispered, not asking but realizing. The small wolf did not react, only blinking slowly as before. A movement in the darkness pulled Vera's gaze upward, her body instantly tensing, each breath feeling constricted as the great wolf stepped out, not fast, not hurried, appearing as if it had always been there. Its gaze fixed immediately on the small wolf in her arms, not Vera, not the blade beside her, but Nixie in her wolf form. The great wolf's body stiffened, then trembled slightly, so clearly it was unmistakable, as if it could not control its own reaction. Vera stood still, not running, not attacking, only observing. "You know," she whispered, without needing to finish the sentence. The great wolf stepped forward, slow, cautious, as if it too were afraid. Vera did not retreat, though she did not understand why she stayed her ground. It stopped right in front of her, this time not attacking, not threatening, only standing there and watching intently. Vera inhaled, then did something she herself did not understand. She reached out and touched it. In that moment, everything shattered, not outside but within her. A wave surged through her, not a sensation but a memory. Fragmented shards, broken pieces, blood, shackles, roars, loss of control, the agony of being torn apart from within. A wordless scream echoed in her mind, not hers, but its own. Vera recoiled, gasping, her heart racing. "What just happened?" she whispered, eyes wide. She had not just touched it, she had felt it. The pain, the madness, the solitude, all of it locked away for too long and spilling out from a single touch. She looked up. The wolf watched her too, its gaze no longer entirely mad, no longer entirely out of control but fractured. "How long have you endured this?" Vera whispered, her voice low, no longer afraid, only full of understanding. The wolf did not answer, but did not take its eyes off her, and for the first time Vera did not see a monster, but something that had been broken, filled with scars and suffering. The small wolf in her arms moved, burrowing closer to her than before, and Vera looked down, then up at the great wolf, then down again. "I understand now," she whispered slowly and clearly. "You are not following us, you are staying and protecting." The wind blew softly, not cold, not threatening. Vera took a deep breath, then exhaled slowly. "I could run," she said, not looking at it, not looking at Nixie, but speaking to herself. "I could leave right now." A long silence followed. Then she shook her head. "But I won't." Vera tightened her grip on Nixie, her gaze lifting, looking straight at the wolf. "I will stay," she said, her voice not trembling, not hesitating, "for if you wanted to kill us, you would have already done so." The wind brushed past. The wolf did not advance, did not retreat, only stood there, and for the first time Vera did not feel she was being hunted, but was standing in the midst of something greater, more dangerous and irreversible, because from the second she touched the giant wolf, the bond of destiny had officially been awakened and reconnected. Chapter 7. Marked. The days that followed passed in a strange rhythm, not peaceful, yet no longer as chaotic as before. Vera began to grow accustomed to waking up to the wolf's tracks around the shelter, to finding prey placed before the entrance without being torn apart, and to the way Nixie always remained in her arms while her gaze frequently turned toward the forest, where a shadow never departed. She cared for Nixie like a mother, clumsy yet patient, every gesture carrying a sense of caution, but with him, everything was different. No words, no agreements, only the moments when she was close enough to wipe the blood from his matted black fur, daring enough to touch wounds that would make any other soul recoil in terror. He did not stop her, but neither did he accept it, only standing there with a gaze that never left her, as if constantly torn between holding her back or pushing her away. Nixie always clung to Vera, seeking her in every small movement, but sometimes the child looked at him in a very strange way, not with curiosity, not as a stranger, but with recognition. They were not a family, yet they lived like one, a deviant family where no one quite understood why they remained. That night, the storm returned, the wind howling violently, snow striking the ground like thousands of needles, and the air becoming heavier than ever. Vera had not yet fallen asleep when she felt it. Something moving in the darkness, a muffled sound, a roar that failed to fully escape. She bolted up, without thought, without hesitation. She rushed outside and found him there, amidst the blizzard. His massive body slammed hard against a tree, claws raking into his own flesh, blood spattering onto the white snow, turning it a blinding crimson. Every movement of his was out of control, as if he were trying to tear himself apart. "Stop!" Vera screamed, but the wind seemed to swallow her voice. He did not hear, or could not. He roared, a violent blend of agony and despair, but it was not directed at her. It was directed at himself. "No, he is destroying himself." Vera gasped, her heart racing. She knew in this situation she should retreat, should run, yet her body seemed to defy her mind, doing the opposite. She took one step, then another, and then Zarek. The name slipped from her lips unconsciously, resolute and clear as if it had been there all along, waiting to be called. Vera faltered, her entire body freezing. What did I just call him? Her voice grew small, unsure, uncomprehending. But the moment the name escaped, he instantly froze, his entire body stopping mid-motion, his head turned toward her, his gaze tightening. It was as if he recognized that name, not for the first time but from long ago, a very long time ago. Vera held her breath. Zarek. She repeated once more but slower, more cautiously, as if testing a forbidden thing. The wolf's body immediately trembled, a very small but unmistakable reaction. And then his form convulsed, not from a loss of control, but as if being pulled backward. Bones shifted, muscles contracted, the shape transformed. Vera took a half step back, not out of fear, but because she could not fathom what was happening. The wolf before her shattered, recoiled, and then stood up in human form. He stood there, amidst the storm, naked, his body covered in wounds, the blood not yet dry, the marks of shackles etched deep around his neck and wrists, as if they had never disappeared. His breath was heavy, fractured, and his eyes were still those same eyes. But now there was something else, a part of a human not yet completely destroyed. Vera could not look away, a strange sensation rising in her chest. Something very familiar from deep within her was resurfacing, yet deviant. "Have I met you before?" she whispered, her voice trembling slightly, though she herself did not know why she asked. Zarek faltered, his gaze locking onto her, his lips moving with difficulty, as if it had been a long time since he had spoken. "You remember me?" His voice was hoarse, broken, barely sounding human. Vera froze. That question should not exist. "I don't," she began, but the words died in her throat. She had no memory of him, no image, no face, no voice, no past. But the feeling of familiarity was unmistakable. It all tore at her in a deviant, inexplicable way. Zarek trembled. "Do not touch me," he said, this time a bit clearer, but it was not a threat. It was a warning. Vera did not retreat, her body completely refusing to listen to her. "No," a small but firm word. She took another step. Zarek shook his head slightly as if trying to hold something from shattering. "Too late," he whispered, and Vera touched him. Everything shattered. Zarek lunged too fast, too close. He pulled her in, his breath burning against her neck. "Don't, Zarek." But he did not seem to hear. Everything had been suppressed by instinct. Pain flared, sharp, hot, tearing through every sense. Vera let out a stifled cry, her body stiffening, hands clenching his shoulders but not pushing away. She couldn't. And seemingly in some strange way her body did not reject him. Instead it was as if it had been waiting. Then the pain spread into a flow, a forced connection being opened, the mate bond. Vera was no longer there. She fell into him, fell into his memories. Shackles, blood, nights of losing control, times he killed against his will, muffled screams. A solitude that stretched into infinity. "No, stop," Vera panted, tears unknowingly streaming down her small face. She was trying to struggle out of those shackles and shattered images, but could not escape, for they were no longer just his memories, but her own. She felt it all as if she had lived through it herself. "It is not just you who hurts," she whispered, tears overflowing. "So do I." She was hurting for him. The storm roared, then fell silent abruptly. Vera fell into the snow, gasping, her body trembling, her neck burning, the bite mark searing her chest. Zarek stood there, in human form but motionless, as if he had just woken up, as if he had just realized. He looked at her without speaking, not advancing, not leaving. Nixie had appeared behind them at some point, but the child was not afraid, did not cry, only watched, as if she already knew. Vera slowly raised her hand to her neck, touching the bite, then looked up at him, her gaze no longer just wary but understanding. "I did not choose you," she whispered, her voice weak but clear, "but my body already has." The wind blew past, the snow fell more heavily. Zarek did not move forward, did not move back, only stood there. But this time, he was no longer a monster. He was a human, and a part of her. Vera knew, from that moment on, there was absolutely no turning back. Chapter 8. The Return. Vera awoke before the light had fully broken. The cold seeped into her skin, yet it was not the chill that made her open her eyes, but the sensation of someone being very near. She turned her head and saw Zarek, no longer the wolf hidden in shadows but a man, sitting against a tree trunk, his body covered in wounds and dried blood, yet what held her gaze was the distance between them, close, but not close enough, as if there were an invisible boundary he refused to cross. "You aren't sleeping," Vera spoke, her voice still hoarse. Zarek did not look at her, answering briefly. "No." A silence passed. Then she asked further, "Because of me?" This time he did not hesitate. "Yes." The answer was simple but so heavy that the air seemed to stall. "You could leave," Vera said slowly. Zarek let out a very slight laugh, devoid of joy. "I tried." Vera faltered, and he raised his head, his gaze meeting hers and holding it. "I cannot." The space between them grew thick. No one spoke further. But the silence this time was no longer empty. It was full to the point of suffocation. Zarek stood up, slowly, as if every movement had to be controlled. He took one step toward her, then stopped. The distance was minuscule, but he advanced no further. His gaze slid down to her neck, where the bite mark was still searing. His breath hitched for a beat. "I should not have done that," he said low, almost a confession. "Vera did not retreat, but you did." Zarek nodded slightly. "I know." He took another tiny step, raising his hand slowly, as if he himself were unsure of what he was doing, his fingers stopping just before her neck, only a fraction away, so close, yet not touching. He clenched his hand, then withdrew it. "I cannot." His voice dropped, nearly breaking. Vera looked at him. Cannot, or dare not. Zarek did not answer, but his eyes said everything. Nixie moved slightly, a small movement but enough to pull everything back. The child crawled out of Vera's arms and walked straight toward Zarek, without hesitation, without slowing. Zarek stiffened, his entire body freezing as if facing something even more difficult than Vera. Nixie stopped before him, looking up, not afraid, not flinching, only watching. Zarek swallowed hard. "Don't," he whispered. Yet his whole body remained motionless, not retreating, not avoiding. Nixie reached out and touched him. Zarek closed his eyes, his breath growing heavy. "I am not worthy." The words broke out low and shattered, meant for no one but himself. Vera faltered. She had never heard such a voice, not from an alpha, not from a monster, but from a man breaking apart under the weight of self-reproach. Zarek opened his eyes, looking down at Nixie for a long time, longer than at anything else. "I was not there," he said slowly. When you needed me, then paused for a beat, and I still do not know if I should be here now. Vera stepped forward, without hesitation. The distance vanished. She stood before him, close enough to touch. But you are still here, she said. Zarek looked at her, not flinching, not avoiding, only holding her gaze. I cannot leave, he repeated. But this time it was not a compulsion. It was a choice. Nixie leaned against his leg as if it were where she belonged. Zarek did not push her away, did not lean down, only stood there, but his hand clenched slightly, holding his emotions inside. Vera looked at them both, then exhaled slowly. We are all wrong, she said softly but clearly. But I am not leaving. She paused for a beat, and neither are you. Zarek did not answer, but this time he took one more step. The final distance disappeared. They stood very close, yet still had not touched. I will not let go again, he said low and firm, not looking away. Vera said nothing, but she did not retreat either. She stood still. The distance between her and Zarek was gone, even though they had not truly touched yet. Nixie leaned against his leg, small but steady, as if that were where she had belonged for a long time. No one said anything, but this time the silence was not empty. It was filled. Vera felt it, not with her eyes, not with her ears, but from within, something was reconnecting, from her to Nixie, and then to him. A flow so light, so thin, yet unbreakable. She inhaled slowly, and for the first time she realized their scents were no longer separate, no longer foreign. Instead, they merged, as if they had always belonged to the same place. Vera faltered, her gaze sliding down to Nixie, then lifting to Zarek. 1 beat, 2 beats. Matching, she whispered, her voice so small it nearly vanished. Zarek did not ask, but his eyes did not leave her, as if he felt it too. Nixie moved, her small hand lightly gripping the fabric on his leg, not to hold on but as if confirming. Vera stepped a little closer, very slightly, but enough to break the final distance. She did not touch Zarek, but did not withdraw either. Do you feel it? She asked, unclear if she was asking him or herself. Zarek did not answer immediately. He looked down at Nixie. Then for the first time his hand touched the girl very lightly, as if in fear, as if in disbelief. Nixie did not flinch, did not react. She just stayed there as if waiting for this moment for a very long time. Zarek paused for a beat, then clenched his hand very softly. His gaze shifted. No longer just control. No longer just inner turmoil, but recognition. He stopped without finishing. No need to finish. Vera looked at him, her heart slowing, a very strange sensation washing over her. Not fear, not doubt, but a truth gradually forming. No one spoke it, but no one denied it. The wind blew softly, and for the first time the three of them stood there, no longer 3 separate individuals, but something becoming a bond, a family. Though no one dared name it yet, they were inseparable. For the first time they were not just bound together, but were choosing to stay, knowing full well that everything ahead would be much more difficult than this. Part 3. The Cruel Truth. Chapter 9. The Order to Kill. The temporary peace did not last long. The atmosphere shifted before Vera could even perceive it, not a sound, not a movement, but a scent of cold, overly clean metal. The scent of humans, of the hunt, of a force that never misses its prey. Zarek stiffened first, his body tensing, his gaze immediately fixing on the deep forest where the darkness was no longer quiet. They are here, he said, his voice low, not a guess but a certainty. Vera gave Nixie a light squeeze in her arms. Who? She asked, yet she already sensed the answer before he spoke. The Royal Guard. It did not take long for the sound to rise. Not hidden, not stealthy, but a direct, organized, purposeful advance. Figures appeared amidst the trees, white cloaks dusted with snow, royal emblems glowing under torchlight, their weapons pointed not at Vera, but at Zarek. Alpha King Zarek, a voice rang out, cold and clear. You have been gone for too long. Vera felt the change in him, not fear, not anger, but a heavy settling, like memories surfacing from where he had tried to bury them. I am no longer your king, he said, not loudly, yet enough to silence everyone. You are still the only one who can end this. The leader stepped forward, his gaze shifting to Vera, and that child. Nixie gripped Vera's tunic tighter, while Zarek took a step forward, shielding her and the child. Back away, a single sentence, yet enough to stop any further advance, though no one retreated. You gave the order, the voice continued. To kill her with your own hands. The air froze. Vera's heart was squeezed, her chest tightening with a pain so sharp she seemingly could not breathe as each word echoed. "What?" she whispered, but she needed no answer because the mate bond answered for her. A sharp pain lanced through her head, memories fracturing incomplete, only a cold, resolute voice saying, "Kill her." Vera took a step back, her eyes searching for Zarek. "It was you, truly you." Her voice broke, but he did not deny it, did not shake his head, only looked at her in silence. Yet that silence and his gaze were enough for everything to collapse. "You sealed your own memories," the man continued, "to lock it away, to try and forget your sins. But that child," his gaze slid to Nixie, "she is the vessel, and your daughter with her was the thing that awakened it." Vera clutched her head. No. Too much information, too many memories racing back into her, making her mind impossible to control. Her body refused to listen. Something within was rising, no longer distant, no longer blurred, but vividly present. Her vision darkened. The surrounding air vibrated. "Stand back," Zarek roared, this time as a command. "You must do it now," the voice shouted. "If you don't, we will." Weapons were raised, aimed straight at Nixie, and in coup moment, everything shattered. The power within Vera exploded, violent, out of control. Trees splintering, the ground cracking. She could no longer stand firm. She screamed his name. "Zarek, I cannot control it." Zarek looked at her, then at Nixie, then at his own hands, his fists clenching yet unable to lift. "No," he whispered, "not this time." His gaze shifted to Nixie. The child stood there, not running, not crying, only looking at him as if trusting he would not do it. Zarek trembled. "I was not there." His voice broke. "When you needed me, and now I must be the one to end it." No one answered, but the question hung like a blade. He stepped forward, slow, each step as if dragging the weight of the world. "I lost you once," Zarek said in a torment of agony and despair. "I will not let you leave me again." Vera understood what those words meant and what Zarek had decided. "No," she rushed forward, standing between him and Nixie. "You cannot do this. Step aside." His voice dropped, this time a king, no longer the man who stood before her. "No." Vera shook her head, her gaze never leaving him. "You are the Alpha King, but I am her mother." The air froze. Zarek faltered for a second, but it was enough for everything to change. He clenched his hands. "If I do not, everyone will die." A short silence, but enough to break everything. Vera looked at him for a long, long time. Then she smiled lightly yet distortedly. "Then let me do it." Zarek stiffened. "Vera, don't." But she had already backed away, pulling Nixie behind her, the power within her surging stronger, more violent. "I have no obligation to save the world," she said, her voice no longer trembling but full of resolve. "I just won't let it take my child from me ever again." And then she touched herself. A light shattered, not exploding but imploding. The entire curse, the entire power pulled back, forced into her. "Vera!" Zarek screamed and lunged, but he was too late. She collapsed. Everything returned to silence. The wind stopped blowing. Zarek caught her before she hit the ground. "I am here," Vera whispered, weak but alive. He gripped her tight, not letting go, not leaving. No longer a king, only a man in agony who could not lose her again. Nixie walked over, touched her, then looked at Zarek, not afraid, not blaming, just there. The royal guard stood still, then slowly lowered their weapons, retreating. No command was given, but they all understood. Zarek was determined to abandon it all, and they could not force him to be an Alpha King any longer. Only the three remained in the midst of the forest. Zarek looked at Vera, then Nixie, then back at her. "Forgive me. I did not do well. I will not let you lose anyone else ever again," he said, voice low but certain. Vera said nothing, only squeezed his hand very lightly, yet it was enough. And for the first time, it was not because they won, but because they were still there, together, amidst all that was lost and sacrificed. Chapter 10. Choosing her. Morning arrived slower than usual, the light filtering through the canopy as if hesitant, not daring to touch them, and Vera awoke in a silence entirely different. No more storms, no more pressure, only a heavy yet peaceful sensation. She lay in Zarek's arms, not unconsciously, not out of a loss of control, but because he held her very tightly, as if she would vanish if he let go. Vera did not move immediately, only listening to his breathing, slow and steady, yet shallow, as if he had never truly slept. Nixie lay close beside her, one small hand clutching her tunic, the other lightly touching Zarek, like an unconscious habit. After everything, the three of them were still there, together. Vera moved slightly and Zarek immediately opened his eyes. "Don't." His voice was hoarse, low, yet clear, not a command, but fear. Vera stopped, looking at him and shaking her head slightly. "I am not going anywhere," she said very softly but firmly enough to calm him. Zarek watched her for a long time, as if confirming it was real, before finally exhaling more slowly, though he still did not release his hold. The days that followed passed without any major events. No pursuit, no combat, no one searching for them, as if the world had decided to let them disappear from it. But that did not mean everything became easy. Vera was weaker, not always obviously so, but enough to notice. Sometimes she would stop in the middle of an action, her gaze turning empty for a very brief moment before returning as if nothing had happened. There were nights she woke up, her breath coming in gasps, hands clenching as if fighting something within, and every time, Zarek was there, not sleeping, not leaving, not asking, not speaking, only placing his hand on her with a steadying weight. "This time I am no longer afraid," he said once, very faintly, as if speaking to himself more than to her. Vera did not answer, but she did not push him away. They left the forest after 3 days, with no clear destination, only going far, far from the old places, far from everything that had once defined them. Zarek no longer led the way like a king. He only chose the paths with the fewest tracks, places where no one set foot, as if his only remaining instinct was to keep the other two safe. Eventually they stopped in a mountainous region, high and quiet, where there were no human footprints, where the world no longer reached. A new life began from very small things. Zarek built a shelter, not perfect, not as solid as a palace, but enough to block the rain and keep them warm. Vera built the fire, slow but patient, while Nixie ran about, small footprints imprinted on the earth, no longer just silent and observant as before, but beginning to make very soft sounds, almost like laughter. Zarek stopped when he heard it, not turning his head immediately as if afraid, but then he could not help himself and turned back to look. Nixie was watching him, not flinching, not afraid, only waiting. 1 beat, then 2. Zarek stepped back, slow, leaning down, his hand stopping before the child's head. For a very short moment he could have withdrawn as he had before. But this time he did not. His hand came down, very light. Nixie did not flinch, only stood there and accepted it, as if this were right. Zarek said nothing, but his gaze no longer turned away. As evening fell, the final sunlight of the day covered the small house, covering 3 people standing closer than before. No more invisible distance, no more avoidance, no more choice between staying or leaving. Vera stood outside, looking down at the valley in the distance, where the world still existed without them. Zarek approached, stopping beside her, not touching but not far apart. "Do you regret it?" he asked. Vera did not look at him. "Because I chose you." A silence passed. Then she shook her head. "No." A small word, yet certain and clear. She turned to look at him. "And you?" Zarek looked at her for a long time, as if facing a truth he had avoided for too long. "I was once a king," he said, his voice low, no longer proud, just a fact. "But that was not where I belonged." A beat passed, his gaze lowering to Vera. "This is where I belong." Vera said nothing, but she did not leave. Nixie ran over, stopping between the two of them, her small hand grasping Vera's hand, then slowly extending the other toward Zarek. No words, no hesitation, only pulling. Zarek looked down at that small hand. 1 second, 2 seconds, then he took it, this time without hesitation. Nixie gave their hands a light squeeze, pulling them closer. The 3 stood tight together. No more distance, no more boundaries, no more doubt, only something that needed no name but was already clear. The wind blew past, not cold, only soft. Deep within Nixie's amber eyes, a spark faintly flickered, very fast, very light. Enough to notice if one looked closely. Vera saw it very clearly, but this time she was not afraid. She only squeezed Nixie's hand tighter, and Zarek did not let go. The sun set completely. Darkness fell, but it was no longer as terrifying as before, because this time they were no longer alone. In the end, their choice was not to save the world. Instead, they chose each other, and determined to keep one another. Bonus chapter. We forgot once, but not again. Night fell very slowly, the mountain wind no longer as cold as before, only enough to lightly sway the canopy and carry a tranquility that Vera still had not fully grown accustomed to. She sat outside, leaning her back against the rough wooden wall, her gaze looking afar but not truly focusing on anything. Her body shivered slightly, very faintly, almost imperceptible if one did not pay close attention. Zarek did, however. He always noticed. He stepped outside, making no sound, not calling her name, only pausing behind her for a beat before approaching close enough to feel her breath, yet still not touching. "Pain again?" he asked, his voice low and soft. Vera did not look at him. Not much, a small lie that they both understood. Zarek did not expose it. He only sat down beside her, closer, and this time he touched her, his hand resting on the wrist where the curse still simmered beneath the skin, not withdrawing, not hesitating as he once had. Vera faltered, not out of fear, but because of a strange sensation washing over her, not pain, not power, but memory. Light opened in her mind, not of the present, but of another place, another time, where Zarek stood without wounds, without shackles, his gaze never fractured as it was now, and Vera was there too, standing opposite him, the distance minuscule but untouched by anyone. "You should not be here," Zarek said, his voice deep, but not yet carrying the weight of burdens. Vera frowned. "I have heard that before." A very slight smile flickered across his lips. The wind blew, carrying something unnameable, and Vera took a tiny step, yet enough to change everything. "What if one day I do not remember you?" she asked. Zarek stiffened, his gaze darkening slightly. He could have lied, but he did not. "Then do not find me." His voice dropped, no longer a warning but an ache. Vera clenched her hand. "I will not do that." Zarek looked at her for a long time, then stepped forward, the distance vanishing, his hand stopping before her face, only a fraction away from touching. "I would rather lose everything," he whispered, "than forget you." The memory shattered. Vera opened her eyes, her breath hitching for a beat. Zarek was still there, right beside her, but his gaze was deeper, heavier. "What did you see?" he asked very softly. "I do not remember clearly," Vera said slowly, "but I know you." A silence passed. Zarek looked at her. "I know," he answered, not surprised, not denying. The wind brushed past lightly, and Vera turned to look at him, the distance between them much closer than before. "We were once," she began, but did not finish. Zarek raised his hand, touching her face, this time not stopping, not withdrawing, his fingers gliding lightly over her skin, slow and cautious. "Not once were we," he said, his voice low, "but still are." Vera did not flinch, did not retreat, only looked at him from very near, close enough to feel each other's breath. "Are you not afraid?" she asked softly. Zarek shook his head. "No, I have been afraid enough." This time Vera did not wait any longer. She raised her hand, touching him with finality, without hesitation, without fear. The distance vanished. His forehead rested lightly against hers, not possession, not instinct, but staying. Vera closed her eyes, not out of weakness, but out of trust. This time, Zarek whispered very close, "I will not let you disappear again." Inside, Nixie slept peacefully, but her small hand still gripped the fabric tightly, as if she knew they were still there. The wind blew past. The night was quiet. No more terrifying darkness. No more distance. No more things left unsaid. They had forgotten each other once. And this time, even if the world took away their memories, they would still find each other.